Well, today we're waiting on Senator Eckhardt to join us. She'll be speaking to us, and you realize that she's going to be probably a little rushed because things are hot and heavy down at the Capitol right now. While we're waiting on her, why don't I go around and introduce my executive committee in case you people have forgotten who they are. Over here, why don't we start with Emil in my corner? I don't know how they're lined up on your place, but Emil, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do for us?
Well, Emil Hunziker. Officially, I'm the voter registration, and I'll be talking a little bit later about some updates to our website that I'm working with Tina.
Thank you, and you're just awesome. Yes, he is odd jobs, but he is just fantastic. He does everything. Okay, Carol?
Emil is also a tech guru on the website with Tina. They are doing a fantastic job on building our website for our membership and the public. I am a precinct chair for Precinct 223, and I am currently secretary of NETCo. However, I have deferred to the recording of these Zoom meetings.
Thank you, Carol. Let's see. Mandy, can you speak?
Hi. Yeah, I guess I wasn't even muted. Sorry about that. Hope I wasn't making noise. Yeah, I am Mandy Prater. I'm the vice president currently. And I was just reposting our link here in the NETCo Dems group because some people let me know that they hadn't gotten the email. So we may be having some more people pop up. I just invited our entire, re-invited our entire group through the NETCo Dems Facebook group. So hopefully some more people will join if they see it.
I certainly hope they do. It'd be fantastic. And since we pay for Zoom, we could accommodate several hundred people, I guess.
Oh, great.
Okay, so Kathy Kidd, I know I saw you somewhere on here.
Hi, I don't want my picture up today. I look like hell. I'm the phone bank captain, so they say. Haven't done that for a while, and I designed our logo, and I'm a general all-around word crafter when I get the opportunity and when it's important. But lately, I've just been working my butt off, so I haven't really contributed anything. But eventually, I will.
Yeah, when things pick up a little bit and we get our candidates announced, we'll be starting up on our phone banking again. Right now, we're kind of quiet as to mostly interested in what's going on legislature right now. And I don't see that our...
Can I say something about that?
Okay.
The legislature. One of the things that I've been thinking lately is this new open carry. You don't need to be licensed to hold guns. I think that that dovetails with the voter suppression that they're trying to push through, so that when it's time to go to the polls, their minions can walk around with guns and threaten people from going to vote. I think that they're also getting ready for a second civil war, and that's part of the reason they want their people to open carry. I think that it's a very bad idea, but I see those two as going together. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that insight, Kathy. I don't see the senator here yet, but I do have Arthur Simon, or Simone, if you will. Anyway, Arthur, could you enlighten us on what's going on with the committee that's working with the senator?
Yes, I'll be happy to. Thanks, Contra. My name is Arthur Simone. I am a precinct chair in 122 and the co-chair of the Travis County Democrats Legislative Task Force. A couple of y'all have been active in that. And yeah, today I have a last surge of what we can do to affect legislation at the Capitol phone bank that I will be dropping into the comments as soon as I copy this link and go back to Zoom and give you a play-by-play as I copy and paste the link to the chat. This is a Google Doc that, yes, my child is currently in the kitchen trying to eat an apple. So we'll share his story here in a minute.
That's fine. We enjoy him.
So what our task force has been trying to do is to elevate the stature and numbers, witness registration numbers of legislation from our Central Texas legislative delegation. So that's all of our Travis County Democrats, as well as Busey and Talarico and Zwiener in surrounding counties, and Eckhardt and Zaffarini on the Senate side. So we made it a point to start flagging all of their legislation and making it a point to go down to the Capitol any day of the week that you have free. And it's had I think a subtle but positive effect on their legislation, as well as bills that they are on as a co-sponsor, as well as just mainstream democratic values bills and opposition to really, really terrible ones. So we can talk real quick about the terrible ones. The permitless carry has a very friendly committee between the House and the Senate right now, and that bill is going to go to the governor, and the governor's going to sign it, and then we're all going to die. I want to be able to make sure that everyone's able to see this document that I shared, the last action weekend. We have some of the Fab Four representing. There are different phone calls that we can make at this point, and I think it's best when reaching out to these committees to speak positively about positive bills. I think that there are a lot of partisan bills that are just going to be deeply entrenched, and they're playing party politics. So a phone call to the Lieutenant Governor's office, for instance, where you want to weigh heavily on something like, well, I think that we can do both at the same time, obviously, but what this document would try to do is to, starting tomorrow, Sunday, we can make phone calls to the message line, and then starting presumably Monday, we can make phone calls to the actual office to give a nudge to all of these bills that are something that has passed to the House and needs to get a hearing in the Senate. Does this mean that any of these bills will necessarily go through the process and then get signed by the governor? No. But the likelihood of it succeeding next session is very high. I want to share the Lie and Try bill just passed and will be signed, I hope, by the governor, by Guerin. This was a bill that was carried last session by Gina Hinojosa, and she did not carry it this session. A Republican carried it this session. So a lot of these bills build on the success of prior bills and relationships that lawmakers make with one another through the sessions. So here we are in the final stages of the session, where a lot of the party politics are going to be hyper-focused on pushing through their legislation, whereas this effort is going to be to try to identify various bills and nudge them in their selective committees. But enough about me. How are you? Senator Eckhardt, are you here? I know that your time is valuable, so let's add you to the conversation, or I'll just zip it while you give us an update. What's going on at the Capitol? What can we all do? How you feel?
Yes, please, Sarah. I'm so happy that you could make it today. It just is wonderful to hear from you. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and you tell us what you've been going through. I'm sure it's very close to hell right now. But anyway, tell us how you're doing.
I'm doing all right. And first off, Arthur, thank you for saying, my time is valuable, but all of our time is valuable. Every single one of us, I mean, goodness, My time is no more valuable than anyone else's. And every one of us is doing what we can do to amplify compassion in this state that so desperately needs it. I'll tell you a little bit. I see so many good friends on here. Oh my goodness. Hey, Dolores, how are you? Lori, so many people. David comes on my policy pints and my jolts all the time. It's just great to see you all. It's so buoying. I want to echo what I jump on the coattails of what Arthur was saying about positive messages on positive bills that need hearings. So the stuff that needs hearings here in these last 2 weeks, that's probably the biggest ad ben inside the legislature for these last 2 weeks, is to push hard on those good bills that have already made it almost through the process and need a little push. Call all the senators, call the chair of whatever that committee is, and strongly encourage them to hear that bill. That's going to be super, super helpful. This is, I don't know, since this is my freshman year, but I have been told that this has been the worst session in memory, and that the lieutenant governor, I've certainly experienced this, but I have to rely on my predecessors and those who've been in the Senate longer. But certainly my experience is that the lieutenant governor is engaged in a work slowdown in order to prevent only his priorities from moving through the Senate. And his priorities are lawless carry, voter suppression, LGBTQ, beat up LGBTQ teens, suppress access to reproductive health care, look like a populist on energy, but actually do nothing about the freeze. And that's pretty much it. So he's pretty much accomplished everything that he wanted to accomplish this session. So aside from passing the budget, he's done. And so he is going to discourage things from making it through the Senate. So my best advice at this point is to encourage Republican chairmen of Senate committees that they actually control their committees and to vote out good bills. Encourage them strongly to vote out good bipartisan governance. That you know them to be good government representatives of the people, and this is a good bill, and it's got broad support, and obviously because it's made it this far, and give it a hearing and vote it out. But I want to hear from you all. So, pop up those hands, the real ones or the virtuals, and let's have a conversation. Lori, what's up?
So thank you for being here today, Senator. I have to admit, I've worked in the legislature in years past and seen some very, very difficult days there. But this year seems to be particularly difficult. And on some of the trans health bills, on permitless carry, I feel like, I don't want to say despondent because we keep going back for more, but gosh, is there anything that we can do to slow that train down on some of these? And I think you gave us a pretty good list there: permitless, lawless carry, voter suppression, LGBTQ health issues pertaining to trans people in particular, outlawing abortion, doing nothing on energy. I mean, it's just a Democrat. How can we best spend our time right now? Because I guess it seems like Republicans just have a lot of momentum, and it's disturbing to me. I don't like it. I want to do something. But how can we do something that's most effective?
Well, let me give a ray of sunshine here. Yes, the parade of horribles is pretty horrible, with lawless carry, abortion suppression, voter suppression, LGBTQ suppression. Even the doctor-patient relationship is being invaded upon, both in the abortion context and in the gender dysphoria context. I mean,
yes.
it's completely, it's philosophically inconsistent with the positions that they've taken in the past with regard to a more libertarian, more conservative with regard to regulation standpoint. So yes, all of that's bad. The parade of horribles is bad. But here's the good news. The good news is this is not representative of a majority of Texas and Texans, and it is a great platform for us going into the interim to go to the business community particularly and say, this other party has abandoned all sense and reason and is now making us a laughingstock, if not a threat to continued economic viability. While we have every reason to be outraged from a moral standpoint, we now have a platform for outrage from an economic standpoint as well. So that is sort of a backhanded piece of good news. It's really resonating with the business community that this leadership continues on a path of, guns in everyone's hand, which is not pro-police, it's not pro-law enforcement. It's dangerous. It makes us a very dangerous and violent society. And who wants to start a business or move a business to a lawless, armed, where gunfights can occur at high noon and it's legal?
That's one of the things that has really been concerning me is what, are these people that are doing these things in the legislature really representing even their own constituents? And, I have to believe they are not. They're just aiming at some kind of control. And I hope this will bite them in the butt when it comes time for re-elections, because I know I'm certainly going to be working to get them out of there. But I also know, I just read a population movement article, and Texas is about 7 major areas in Texas have literally tripled in people moving from the north, mainly, and a lot of them from the Massachusetts area and areas that have been traditionally Democratic. Mm-hmm. And hoping that move will certainly get us turned around here in Texas, because it's not only embarrassing, it's dangerous, and it's just awful. But anyway, I wanted to say we got a lot of voter registration to do with these new folks.
We do. And of course, Sandra, and everybody on this Zoom call knows that we do really well in Travis County. We've got everybody registered and we turn people out, and that's made us a real force. And it means that in redistricting, they'll probably try and stuff me entirely into Travis County so that they can take Bastrop from me, because Bastrop is purple. And they'll need those kite tails that go way the hell out into the rural areas, that take a little piece of urban area and then have a huge coattail into the rurals in order to preserve Republican seats. So let's talk about elections for a moment. Elections matter, of course. We don't really have a problem here in Travis County, with the exception of those coattail, those kite tail positions in the U.S. House and also in the Texas Senate. We do have, we have Don Buckingham with a piece of Western Travis County, and then a massive kite tail out into the rural areas to the west and to the north of here. We have Donna Campbell, who has a little piece of San Antonio and a little piece of Austin, and then the I-35 corridor and a kite tail out to the west. Redistricting is going to be a bear. The leadership has put Joan Huffman in charge. They've put the one senator with the highest vulnerability in redistricting, Republican, in charge of the redistricting. Well, so she can draw the district necessary for her to keep her seat first, and then draw everything else around it. So she'll draw a piece of Houston for herself, and then a massive kite tail to wherever she needs in order to pull in enough population. So we have 10 more years of this, y'all. We have 10 more years of a Republican leadership that does not represent a majority of Texans. So what I would suggest is that the Democratic Party take over, claim from the Republican Party the mantle of true fiscal conservatism, because they are moving into a realm where they are being fiscally imprudent. They're leaving $14 billion of federal money on the table in an effort to not expand Medicaid. That's cruel. And we as a party have always said that's cruel. We as a party now have to start saying that's fiscally stupid.
Well, and I'm thinking we might need to be making some road trips too. Because when I came here about 8 years ago, places like, Hayes County and Bastrop County, Burnett County, Caldwell, all of those were very, very red. And in the past 8 years, they've been turned purple, and they're leaning, toward the blue. If we just get in our cars and drive out to that kite tail and, talk to those people and get them to the poll educated, where, and get this these lies from Fox News and Radio America, and that's I think where we need to attack. And yeah, Travis County just needs to be our jumping off point.
It's true. All of our major metro areas need to be our jumping off point. We need to really draw our alliances with Harris County, Tarrant County, Dallas County, Bexar County, El Paso, and really work those urban areas and push outward into those suburban counties and start talking to folks about, not about party. I know that this is sacrilege for me to say as a good Democrat of generations of Democrats, but the way to start the conversation is to start it on values and say, listen, we share the value of we don't want unnecessary regulation. We don't want government that looks good but doesn't do anything. We don't want to squander our precious resources, whether it's money or land or air or water. We share those values. What has your leadership, Republican or Democrat, leave the labels off, what has your leadership at the state done for you? If you don't like what they've done for you, then let's talk about what good government looks like and who's going to run in your county for state office, Republican or Democrat. Who's going to run in your county on a platform of actually addressing the 30% of Texans who have no health insurance, of actually addressing appropriate funding formulas for public education, of actually addressing a just-in-time energy market that fails us on the coldest day of the year, and stops screwing around with, abortion, guns, gays, and God.
Yeah, that's what early last year I was working for the census, and I went out into these rural areas where there was no internet. My cell phone wouldn't even work. And as I talked to people, about the census, I also, just kind of chatted, how do you feel about that? And a lot of people would give their right arm to be able to have an internet access. And that is something our state has completely ignored, those people out there.
Well, let me walk that back for a moment, though, Sandra. That's one piece of good news out of this legislation. I think it was SB 5 that was Nichols' bill, passed early. And Nichols, and I can't remember what the House companion was, that actually sailed through to create a statewide broadband plan and a broadband office that's actually under University of Texas, which was a very good move, in order to draw down the federal funds to get a statewide broadband network in partnership with the private sector. So that's actually going to move. Curiously, blessedly, that was nonpartisan, bipartisan, early, and it set the stage for us to partner with the Biden administration, pull down that money, and make that happen. So that's good news, and it's super quiet, and there's a reason why you haven't heard about it.
That's good.
I think that the proponents of that, both in the public sector and the private sector, wanted to keep that super low profile, just get her done, and then start working in the interim to make that happen. So I have very high hopes for that. So that's one piece of good news that I can provide to NETCo this morning.
That is wonderful. And I hope it happens soon, because that would be one of the best ways that we can communicate and educate.
Mm-hmm. And that's also a window into, that's the kind of win that we could duplicate in the future. Let me give you sort of the bones of that win. So people for years have been talking about how we had to have a broadband strategy. There was an interim study, so that's thing one to learn. There was an interim study with a really good group put together to see what needed to happen with broadband. That interim study came back in November last year with a template for legislation that needed to happen. Then a powerful Republican committee chair, Robert Nichols, who's the transportation committee chair, championed the legislation. So he could not be questioned as loyal to the current leadership. And the bill itself was framed up so that nobody could take a patronage lap on the bill because it was placed in UT rather than in the governor's office or in the controller's office. So it was depoliticized, and it was early, and it came out of a study with a powerful chairman who has enough independence to push it through. So these are all lessons to take, for next time on those big policy leaps forward. Do an interim study, identify a champion who has the ear of leadership and the fear of leadership, and get it done as early in the session as possible with very little fanfare.
We need to keep that in mind.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So that's a really good thing.
Day. I'm happy now.
Now, I wish we had been able to do that with Medicaid, because that's another big policy move that should have happened this session, particularly in the frame of a pandemic.
Absolutely. Arthur, did you have a comment?
I have a question for Senator Eckhardt about your thoughts on HB 5, the big executive limitation of executive power. As a former county judge, I think that's a big pushback to the pandemic that is playing more at drilling Greg Abbott to the floor than it is doing right by how our counties interact with state mandates and with one another, especially when you're dealing with a big suburban area that I'd like to hear your thoughts on where that bill is at and how you think it's going to shake out.
I think the Senate version was SB 7, if I recall. I can't remember. It was Birdwell's bill, Senator Birdwell's bill. Yeah, very early I identified both of those bills, Burrow's bill in the House and Birdwell's bill in the Senate, that were designed to clip the governor's powers even more than they already are. The governor, y'all know this, the governor's office doesn't actually have that much power in the state of Texas. And in times of emergency, as a former executive over the county, I have a great deal of sympathy for the governor, which is weird for me to say. I don't think he used his executive power well during the pandemic, God knows. And he certainly used it to bash me about the Head and Shoulders. But I'm not in favor of taking that power away from the office. And I told both the House sponsor and the Senate sponsor that from the get-go, saying, I know you might be surprised by this, but I'm going to be against your bill and in support of the governor on this. And I asked the lieutenant governor if he would put me on the conference committee, and he, found that hilarious. Of course, I'm not on the conference committee, but nevertheless, I tried. I said, listen, I was the only vote against that bill in the Senate. I think I was the only one against it.
Yes, Arthur.
I had another question that just completely escaped me right now.
Okay.
So, hey.
Think on it. I think Daniel Harrison, did you have a question? Daniel?
No, I'm sorry. That wasn't what I was doing.
Oh, okay. All right. That's fine. Okay. Who has a question here?
SB 29, the transgender participation in high school sports. Where is that bill at, and is there anything that we can do to make sure it doesn't happen?
I think that transgender UIL passes. I think that the frankly more dangerous bill is the bill that defines it as child abuse for a parent or a doctor to provide medication or surgical procedures to transgendered teens. And I can't remember what bill number that one is, but that is
that the House Bill 1399?
It may be. I'm really bad at remembering numbers, but while the transgender UIL bill is bad, and that's just horrible to prevent kids from playing sports with their own gender identification, and also it opens the door to little Susie's mother calling out little Debbie and wanting to see Debbie's original birth certificate because little Debbie beat little Susie in a track meet. So little Debbie must not be a real girl. I mean, it's just horrible. Don't get me wrong, it is horrible. But I frankly think that the gender dysphoria bill is scarier because it means that parents and doctors of trans kids can be charged with child abuse for supporting their trans kids.
So it's SB 1311 is the bill that's in the Senate. It has passed committee, and but the Senate doesn't do calendars like the House does calendars.
No,
so
we have
what's
a calendar for one, and his name is the lieutenant governor.
Is there, it seems to me, Texas is passing laws that are really not only infringing on our rights as human beings and American citizens, and some of these, would they have to be tested at the Supreme Court level in order to be nullified? And could
Yes. So near term in these last 2 weeks, yes, definitely get a hold of those committee chairs and say, here, this bill's a really good one. This one should be prioritized. This is bipartisan. This is good government. Go, go, go. After session, support all of those good nonprofits that work on filing lawsuit against bad bills, because there's going to be a whole ton of them. And Lori, you may know the court case, the recent court case with regard to the and/or decision on a wrongful conviction. I think it was a wrongful conviction case.
I don't, it's not coming to me right now.
There was a recent Supreme Court decision where they went with a strict construction of the statute and actually ruled in the right way. And all the lawyers across the land went, yay! Because it did show that the Supreme Court, SCOTUS may actually stand up on its hind legs and do the right thing here and there on these cases.
The one that concerns me quite a bit is the new abortion bill, and I thought that is a terrifying bill. I think it's going to the Supreme Court eventually. I just worry because the Supreme Court has obviously had some changes. So,
Well, and this is interesting because there's a strategy at play on both the abortion bill and on the criminal the child abuse definition on the LGBT trans teen bill, where and on voter suppression, we're seeing this strategy of creating a private cause of action and a lawsuit vigilantism on these guns, gays, and God type things, so that they're creating these private causes of action, and they're also beefing up the attorney general's ability to bring suit. So they're arming individuals and the AG's office for constant litigation. So we're going to see huge amounts of litigation, both from the left and the right.
Well, recently a Texas judge ruled against the NRA, and I took that as a good sign that, you know, we have gotten some good judges elected, and maybe there's hope for this state after all.
There's an interesting play afoot where, I mean, there's so many lines that we could talk about here, because not only are we creating legislation that has a private cause of action and a more powerful AG, we're also deflating the power of the courts, so that the legislative branch is overstepping the balance of power between the legislative and the courts. So I don't know if y'all are aware, because this also has flown under the radar. Joan Huffman's redistricting committee made a recommendation with some an early bill to redistrict the appellate courts in Texas and take them from 14 appellate courts down to 5. And then that bill was amended in committee to take it from 14 down to 9. And then the appellate judges themselves were able to kill it off. And so that bill's not going to pass, but it shows that there is a concerted effort to suppress the power of the courts and maximize the power of litigants on their side of the philosophical spectrum.
Senator, but I think are they going to pass the other bill on the statewide court of appeal, which would?
You're right, David. That one is still alive. The statewide court of appeal, which is sort of a super court of appeal that that I and others on the Senate floor argued with Joan Huffman that it was patently unconstitutional under the Texas Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that even if it does pass, I think that the appellate judges themselves are going to be so repulsed that it'll be pretty easy to bring a lawsuit and get it pulled down. Because I think even Republican appellate judges are looking at that going, that's not constitutional. I'm hoping so.
Okay. I mean, that one was, I think, basically designed to take a lot of power over governmental stuff from the third court of appeal that we won control of.
It's basically redundant to the Texas Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. So, can I'm driving, so that's why I've been rather, but I'm pulled off to the side of the road to ask you a question. I'm a little bit hopeful that there's some bipartisanship on some issues in education.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they passed along the lines of what you were talking about with the interim study. I believe they passed the Commission on Higher Ed, so that maybe we can do some higher ed work in the next session. The other part I wanted to ask you about was with public ed. There are a couple of good bills coming out of the House on STAR testing.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm hoping you can help get through the Senate. I don't have the numbers in front of me, obviously, but there was one to basically rewrite the STAR testing and take away some of the high stakes value of it, and there was one from Aaron Zwiener that to essentially make the writing STAR optional and let schools choose to use a student's portfolio instead of the writing star test. And those look, there does seem to be some bipartisan outrage at how oppressive the star tests have become to our youth. And I mean, I'm hoping that there's some good work that can be done there. There were also some terrible education bills. There's one to completely destroy the social studies curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you, I can get your staff the numbers. I just don't, I'm in the car. I don't have them with me.
That would be great. And I've got one of my policy folks concentrates on nothing but education bills. And you're right, there are some good things that are going through, and that's sort of another example along the lines of broadband, that there was a quiet bipartisan acknowledgement at the beginning of the session to hold harmless public education and to not allow any erosion from the House bill from HB3 last time. So that was a good bipartisan, we're not going there. We're going to make sure that funding levels stay unharmed this legislative session. So that was a good thing. You don't hear much about that. You're right. There's also a lot of talk about how we move the needle forward on higher ed, because this was supposed to be the higher ed session, and circumstances overtook us. Understandable. So the study is a placeholder for next time to keep the fire under higher ed, much as we were talking about before. It's a good playbook. Get a good interim study so that you know what you're going to be doing going into the next session. So that's very helpful. Running down your list of things, David. STAR testing, you're right. There was a raft of really good bills on placing the STAR test in its appropriate context. What is it really useful for? And don't use it for what it's not useful for, particularly coming out of this pandemic. And so there was a whole bunch of bills, both Democratic and Republican filed bills on shrinking the STAR test down to appropriate use, and providing alternatives to STAR test for kids, like portfolios. Most of the Democratic bills didn't go anywhere, and so they're being tacked on to Republican bills. Not necessarily a bad thing. I've signed on to a few of the Republican bills recently because they're moving, and they are substantially similar to Democratic efforts to shrink the STAR test down. So you're right. That's indicative of some good bipartisanship on shrinking the STAR test down to its appropriate utilization. One thing you didn't mention, and this also is bipartisan, but it's not being openly discussed because it's so incendiary, is that the governor is sitting on a huge wad of federal money that was supposed to go to education to help our kids recover the educational losses from COVID. And the governor has not distributed that money. There's still he's now distributed almost all of it, but there's still about, and frankly, I don't know the actual number, there's probably about $3 billion still sitting in the governor's office that he has not yet distributed through the Texas Education Commission.
Isn't that criminal?
Hmm?
Isn't that criminal?
No, although it is possible that the federal government will claw that money back for failure to have distributed and used it in the time frame allotted.
So, Senator, what it sounds like is if there are some Republicans who want to do good work, but they have to do it quietly so it doesn't look like they're, working with Democrats, and, so on these high profile things like guns and abortion, they have to get out there and be crazy. But when there's some, and there's some that are just completely, batshit crazy, but a lot of them will look for ways to be bipartisan and work for us if it doesn't get too much publicity and doesn't get them in trouble with their primary voters. It's so bizarre. I mean,
it's not bizarre. It's not bizarre, David. It's just politics, and Democrats do it too. I mean, let's be fair. Democrats do it too. We
Yeah.
don't do it to the same, the same horrific levels where, people's lives are at stake, but it's a playbook as old as the hills. So
Yeah.
I'm looking for ways to give Republican colleagues the cover to do the right thing. And I think that's how we build back to a day where deliberation is actually happening at the Texas legislature and everything in the Senate isn't a 13 to 18 or 12 to 19 vote. We saw actually this week on Wednesday, we've had just a whole session of 13 to 18 and 12 to 19 votes, entire session of it. And, for that, I could just turn in my vote sheet at the beginning of the day and then go hang out at Barton Springs for the rest of the time. But last week we started to see things start to shift, and there were some different alliances, some votes broke in ways that I would not have predicted. And it showed that deliberation is starting to actually work on the Senate floor at this late hour. But I'll take it. Let's keep working that scene, that there are reasonable people in the Republican Party who have been silenced and, they're bound and gagged. If we can talk to them about how horrible it is to be bound and gagged, and that, what do they need in order to assert themselves, because they're tired of being bound and gagged. They really are. I feel worse for the Republicans in the Senate and the House than I do for the Democrats. At least we can say what we think.
I believe Elizabeth Gray had a question. Elizabeth, do you want to voice your question?
No, I didn't really have a question. I was just, I'm just listening. Thanks.
Hey, Elizabeth, how are you?
Fine, good. Survived the winter storm.
Yeah. That's
Is it true? Is it true they are going to do nothing about ERCOT and what happened?
As far as they're concerned, they've done what needed to be done, which is fire a bunch of people and rattle sabers. And they've juiced it. They're done. That was the fix. Did anybody notice? The energy thing is super complex. Let me try and y'all check my homework on this and see if this tracks with what you're seeing. So we have a just-in-time energy market. We have some of the cheapest per unit energy in the entire United States because we produce so much more energy than we actually utilize. We're a massive exporter of energy. And so we can have a just-in-time market and have been able to have a just-in-time market because of that. We have more energy than we actually use, except historically in peak hot days, not peak cold times. So ERCOT was developed for reliability mostly on hot peaker days, not cold peaker days. And ERCOT was never developed to regulate the energy industry. That's not what its function ever was. ERCOT's only function was to create reliability on peaker days. Now, did they succeed on peaker days in the winter? Obviously not. And 200 Texans are dead because of that. But not to excuse ERCOT, but to explain ERCOT. The only way for them to have created reliability, the only mechanism that they were given for the creation of reliability was peak pricing. That was the only mechanism that they were given. Jack the price up so high that those large energy producers would curtail their export and keep it at home. That was the only mechanism that the Texas legislature gave to ERCOT to create reliability in peak times. They didn't give ERCOT or the PUC the authority to regulate for weatherization. And they never told PUC and ERCOT, much less the Railroad Commission with regard to natural gas, that they had to have weatherization for winter peaks. So when all this happened, the Texas legislature pointed fingers at PUC and Eckhardt and said, "You're to blame, off with their heads, now it's fixed." But we still don't have weatherization requirements. There's some bills passing through the House that I think will create some weatherization requirements, but the industry is bucking and pitching. They don't want it. They're going to fight it tooth and nail. I had a really good energy efficiency bill that almost made it through the Senate. Even Chairman Hancock on Business and Commerce was in favor of it. That would have created some energy efficiency at the consumer end, much like Austin Energy does in rebates to weatherize homes, so that each home will use less energy and therefore be less of a pull on the overall grid. But industry is pushing back hard because the Texas legislature does not like regulating the energy industry. And so, yeah, we're going to see a little bit of fiddling around the edges, and that's going to be good. But leadership feels they've done everything that they needed to do. They fired a bunch of people, and that's supposed to be enough. And then blamed Eckhardt for using the only tool they had in the toolbox, which was price.
I think Sammy Easterday has a question for you, Sarah. Sammy?
Hey, Sammy.
Sammy, are you there?
I think Mayor Wallace is on here, and he might have something to say about the freeze and what happened there, because I know Mayor Wallace struggled with Encore and their water supplies.
Yes. There you are, Mayor.
Hey, Mayor.
That's my mayor now that I've been meaner. And before he speaks, I want to tell you, and I am sorry, but here in Manor, we suffered no loss of power, no loss of water. And it was just, we're kind of embarrassed, but thank you, Mayor. Now go ahead, Larry.
All right, there we go. Especially what Senator's saying is, and I think more critical sometimes with the smaller cities and rural cities, we don't know necessarily who to go to. We don't have the systems and the structures. And we have to over-rely a lot of times on our elected officials to hopefully know that. And so when something does happen, to be able to reach out and say, hey, did you do your STAR submission to be able to get access and open up the floodgates of access from the county and from the state and what's been approved by the governor or by the president, right? We have elected officials going into positions and are just doing the basic bare minimum of training that the Texas Municipal League and others require, which covers nothing other than just Robert's Rules of Order, right? And so now you have these critical situations that occur, and unless you have someone that is actually trying to take care of the people, that is actually going to go through the Rolodex on LinkedIn, Facebook, and even in the community and reach out to people, this is why we're seeing the issues. And this is why we keep seeing, even with the Republican Party, right, individuals that are only looking out for themselves because they don't really understand the community, the issues, the systemic issues and things that their people are really living with and having to deal with. And which you heard a lot, especially during the winter storm, especially during COVID, with the vaccination. You're saying, how in the world, if we really learned something new, are we now experiencing the same situation 3 times in a row within 12 months? We clearly haven't learned anything. And more so, we clearly realize the Republican Party hasn't learned anything. And what you saw probably from myself and our Mayor Pro Tem was, who cares about the role we're in? We're here to lead and we're here to take care of people. And that means using our phone and calling people. That means it's outside of the 2 hours or the 2 meetings a month. Even though we're volunteer, even though we're not getting paid, we are the ones that were invested with the power to be able to speak on behalf of everybody. And that's what we need. That's what, you're talking about a senator here. Probably the Republicans are scared to be able to say because of the backlash that you're seeing at the federal level of them starting to get kicked out of office. And they're more worried about staying in office and getting kicked out for the right reasons.
I could not agree with Mayor Wallace more. I've said this to this group before and to others, and probably to my detriment, but there is a persistent, and unfortunately I hear some Democrats picking up this strategy too. There's a persistent drumbeat to paint government as at least incompetent, if not corrupt. And people run on that. They run on a platform of government is at least incompetent, if not corrupt. And then they get in government and then they tragedy pimp. When something terrible happens, they blame all the long-serving public servants, bureaucrats who are not elected, who've been struggling in obscurity trying to protect us. And something bad happens, and they go, it's the bureaucrats' fault because government is at least incompetent, if not corrupt. And I, your fearless leader who you've just elected, is the only thing that's going to save us from this incompetency and this bureaucracy and this corruption. And so it creates this catch-22 where people win office saying government sucks, and then they need government to keep sucking so that they can be heroes.
And the last thing I'll say here, as you're talking about all different bills, and I appreciate all the information, right? One of the things I really look and listen and why I want that information is because those of us that have been in office, we realize majority of what we want to get passed is not going to pass, right? And so taking it and seeing the barriers and the hindrances and then going to these nonprofits, these other organizations, companies that are doing grants and programs and services and saying, all right, we know what is going to happen, but we also know what isn't and why it isn't. And how do we use that language? How do we use that understanding to be able to bridge where government is always going to fail?
And we need to reinvest in a public infrastructure. We need to reinvest in what I call opportunity infrastructure. Whether it's, of course, when we think of government infrastructure, we think of highways and schools and courts. Absolutely, yes, that's part of it. But I'm also talking about opportunity infrastructure like emergency response, public health, reverse 911 during an emergency circumstance. That sort of informational, just what Mayor Wallace was saying. We shouldn't have to rely on the Rolodex and the LinkedIn of our elected officials. We are living in the age of technology. The idea that the Texas Workforce Commission's computer system crashed when people were trying to apply for their unemployment benefits, that's the kind of opportunity infrastructure we need to be investing in, and customer service to the public, so that we can rebuild confidence in opportunity infrastructure, that there is a well understood network that you can tap into when you lose a job, or when your son is in jail, or when your elderly parent is showing signs of Alzheimer's and you don't know what to do. We need to rebuild a infrastructure of opportunity and assistance that is truly reliable. And they can also, that opportunity infrastructure can reliably say, honestly, you have resources. And this is a very difficult topic that I came up against a lot as county judge. People would come to me and say, fix this problem for me. And I would say, well, actually, you're fairly wealthy and super resourced, and I only have so much to go around. So I'm going to reserve the county resources for people who are at 200% FPL or are living in a low opportunity area. So I am not going to use the county resources for you. And they would be super, super angry at me and say, if, everyone should get the same treatment. And I would push back and say, there's only so much to go around in terms of the public fisc. And so that opportunity infrastructure, that special, that type of assistance is reserved for people at 200 FPL and or living in a low opportunity area. Sorry. Period. Full stop.
In addition, it seems to me that the primary thing we're talking about is communication between government and the people.
Mhm.
That's the way I look at it. And it seems to me the Republicans have been working very, very hard for the last several years to eliminate that altogether. They don't want people to know that these things exist that can help them. They don't want people to know what government is doing good for them, so they can literally keep themselves in office and say, I'm the only one that can help you. I mean, it's Trump all over again, and I'm just sick of it.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. You touched on another hot button issue for which, silver lining here, we can use in the interim and in the next election cycle. The party who says government is at least incompetent and if not corrupt, mostly are the Republicans, and yet they have created. They lack so much transparency. They do all kinds of stuff behind closed doors. Briscoe Cain tried to push through voter suppression in the middle of the night with no hearing. His own party pushed back on him. It lacked so much transparency. The Senate regularly meets in full caucus behind closed doors, regularly. There is talk, they talk about voter integrity. There is no openness or integrity in state government. Everything's done behind closed doors. You go to a hearing to give testimony and you feel like you're just shouting into a vacuum because they're not listening. Half of them aren't even there. During the LGBTQ UIL hearing, only 2 members of the committee sat the dais, the chair and one of the Democratic senators. All the other senators just left the dais. They didn't want to hear it.
See, that's the problem, and that's what makes it so frustrating when you, like Arthur and the committee that's trying to do something and they're just up against brick walls. And you go down to the Capitol and you waste your time and you submit all these things at the kiosk, and what happens? Nothing. There's got to be a better way. I mean, I know Kathy, my friend Kathy Kidd over here, is constantly talking about civil discourse. She likes to call it civil war, but we just might be, on the cusp of that, because I know I get so angry. I just want to, storm the Capitol myself, but can't do that, right?
Well, actually, you can. There's a law now, lawless carry. So if you want to storm the Capitol fully armed, rock on, because we just made it legal.
I just can't see myself doing that. I may have to.
That's terrible. That was a terrible joke. Do not. Yeah, that's terrible. I retract that. That was for anybody listening. For any recording of this, please know that was a bad joke, and I take it back before.
Well, it was a joke for me to try to storm anything either. I'm approaching my 80th birthday, so it's not likely I'm going to be storming anything.
Right. I only, I make that joke, and it's a dark one, because I do see that we are arming insurrectionists through our laws. And I didn't know this until recently. I started doing some research on lawless carry, and over the last couple, since about 2013, the Texas legislature has systematically been dismantling the prohibited weapons statute. So it is now, even before lawless carry passed, it was completely legal to walk down Congress Avenue with a sword, with nunchucks, with brass knuckles, with switchblades, with rifles, and now we are appropriately outraged over lawless carry, but lawless carry just adds handguns to that list.
Well, Kathy, did you have a question?
I wondered if any one of us owns a bullhorn and how much it costs, because I think one thing we can do is each of us keep a bullhorn when we're in public and we see guns. We yell through our bullhorns that there are guns, and people will look at that person, and that person will go, whoa, 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 I'm not threatening. And we'll go, yes, you are. And, you know, we use our voices rather than wet arming ourselves. I think we're going to all have to own a fucking bullhorn, excuse my French, so that we can point out these jerks when they're, you know, walking around with their stupid guns. Does anyone have a bullhorn? And do you know how much it costs? No?
Bullhorns are pretty cheap. I think that's a great idea. And, you know, let's just riff here. I'm also thinking, you know, Workers' Defense had a wonderful slogan where people would wear t-shirts that say undocumented and unafraid. Maybe we should have t-shirts made that say unarmed and unafraid. Because I will not arm myself.
I won't either.
I believe that an armed society is a violent and deadly society.
Especially white men walking around with guns. They're the ones I'm afraid of. And if they see a black person with a gun, they're going to call the cops. But white men with guns, nobody's going to call the cops. Therefore, we need to have a voice, a very, very loud voice, to alert everybody to the fact that there is a gun in this store. There is a gun in your school. There is a gun in your front yard. There is a gun wherever you see one.
I think that you are onto something. And I think that we should use our voices to say, you know, I see that you are openly carrying, and that causes me and everyone around me stress. And therefore we are going to exert a little peer pressure here, because you are frightening. I do not feel safe around you. I do not feel your paternalistic, you know, protection. You scare me.
I'd love to do that. Dolores, did you have a question?
No, the puppy's barking, so I'll pass on that one. Thank you, though.
It's good to see you, Dolores.
Okay. Yeah, we've got cats walking over computers. I've seen that. We got babies that are eating apples. We've got dogs barking, birds chirping here. Screeching, actually, my bird screeches. Anyways, anybody else have any questions for Sarah? Arthur, did you have another question?
Sure. My question is, when you are, if we're trying to get people to make phone calls, we want to make the most of their time and be the most effective we can on some of these positive bills. Is it best to reach out to a committee chair's office, or the committee's clerk, or the committee chair's office as legislative director? I mean, what's your take on how to best guide people to speak on some stuff they can do?
My answer is going to be the least satisfactory of answers, which is all three. And the reason for that is each legislator is different. Some rely heavily on their chief of staff. Others will rely heavily on their legislative director. Others will rely heavily on the staff of the committee. So it's really all three. Hit everybody you've got a contact for.
Can I ask what your opinion is on the two committees being Senate Education and Senate Jurisprudence?
For education and jurisprudence, again, I would hit all three. I would hit all three. Now, Senator Huffman is particularly powerful on jurisprudence, so I would concentrate my efforts on her chief of staff. But I would still hit all three with regard to jurisprudence. And, you know, phone calls are great and the most powerful, but don't be, you know, don't discount the flooding email boxes. Yes, they will go, oh, we got a whole bunch of emails, and then they'll push it aside. But they do note, I got a whole bunch of emails on this issue. They will be able to viscerally see the volume that they're getting. in emails. So don't discount that as well. The phone calls are the most powerful, but don't discount the volume emails. They do make a difference. That kind of advocacy is super important. And I know that it feels like whistling into the wind, but you have no idea where that effort takes the issue. You may never know that the email that you sent had an effect. It's one of those, it's sort of, I think of public services as truly a religious practice. I know that sounds super hippy dippy of me, but I really do. And it's like they say, in the Bible and all the major religions, a true gift is the one you give without any expectation. And advocacy is the same. Don't lose hope because you exerted some advocacy. You advocated, and you may never know what you have set in motion. And you have to be good with that. You have to make peace with that and keep going. Keep going.
Senator?
Yeah.
How bad is SB7 going to get in conference committee? Can we do anything? I mean, because it got better in the House, and then I'm afraid it's going to get much worse in the Senate and the conference.
It is. I mean, this is a Trump retaliation bill. This voter suppression, this voter integrity thing is priority number one this session. So yes, it's going to get very bad. We will do again what we did before, which all the Democrats will line up and just pound questions. This may be cause for some serious chubbing and maybe even some filibustering in the last 5 days. We'll see. But it's certainly an issue that merits that kind of effort. And it will generate a tremendous amount of legal challenge, as it should.
I certainly hope so.
Senator Dolores, I want to thank you so much for all that you have done for our community, for counties, because I know the legislature has really beat up on us this session, and I appreciate your support in that regard. One of the things that I am concerned about is the health of the Travis County Democratic Party. I want us to be exemplary. I want us to lead the state of Democrats. And I think we need to put some energy and maybe some resources into making sure that the Travis County Democratic Party is there to serve us all, healthy, wealthy, and compassionate to those of us that are seeking reelection and want to keep the passion going in our offices. So I hope that you can help us in that regard and direct us in the way that we need to go to maintain the status that we currently have. I truly appreciate you, and I understand your frustrations. They're not bad jokes. That's the way it is. And
I want to be careful in my speech. I'm trying to. I think we all should practice right speech.
Yes, it's hard.
Are funny until they get real. So I'm careful about that.
Yes.
I still actually have a complaint of the Judicial Conduct Commission against me for wearing a pink knitted beanie on the dais.
No, I remember that still.
That's still pending. And
well, yeah, perception is everything. We know that. But we understand your frustrations here among friends and your supporters. And we know how hard it is over there. Going over there to the Capitol for me is very dark. And it's been that way for the past 4 sessions. Something has to be done, but I don't know, it'll be in our lifetime. But we do. I hope so.
We're going to keep going. I mean, it was super dark before, and I used to say I never wanted to be in the Texas legislature. I preferred local government where we actually got stuff done. And then something happened, and I said I'd run, and here I am.
Yay, good thing for that.
Yeah, it's not a fun duty, but it's a necessary duty.
Sure, it's your passion.
Let me come back to the local party for a moment.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we want a local party that's healthy, wealthy, and wise. And we really need that, and we need to have our local party completely hardwired in with the local parties in the other major metros, and we need to make sure that we are a team and that we're moving forward together. We don't want unnecessary suffering inside the party that divides our attention.
Correct.
And we have fabulous bone structure here with so many people registered and so many people who turn out to vote. So we have a lot of opportunity here to work in the interim to use that fabulous bone structure to assist our neighbors as well in Bastrop, Williamson, Hayes, and also our like-minded affiliates in Harris County, Tarrant County, Dallas County, Bexar County. We have a lot to learn. Let's not get so egoistic that we think that we've got it. We have a lot to learn from the other party apparati in the other counties as well.
Thank you.
One of the things I was attempting to start before the pandemic was a kind of a collaboration among all the various Democratic clubs.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think we have a greater opportunity to reach out to these other counties and other surrounding areas. And I know my club has done that. We have people from 7 different counties surrounding us that are part of NETCo Dems. So we're not just Northeast Travis County. And so it can be done. And I hope to, continue that work once we can get out and about again, to bring in some of those outlying areas. Because, Travis County seems to be pretty much almost 100% blue. I think there's a couple of Republican, maybe council people in some of the smaller communities, but that's about it. But we need to spread that outside these boundaries. And
that's music to my ears, Sandra. I think that the way we become stronger is by reaching out beyond us, because we are the blueberry. And I'll tell you, I used to have epic arguments with Senator Watson where I would say, why can't we do this? And he'd say, have you met the other senators? Do you know what the rest of Texas looks like? You have the luxury of living in your blue bubble, and you have no idea what it's like up here. And now I've had to call him and eat crow and say, you're absolutely right. I had no idea. So we need to challenge ourselves by getting out of our blue bubble and going and talking to our neighbors to find out what about us scares them and what are their concerns, because they are they who we want to be a we, but they are afraid of us.
Yeah, that's true. And I ran into that, like I said, when I was working the census and just, taking my own day trips out into the various areas, and I'd knock on strangers' doors and just to talk. And you find out that there's a lot of Democrats out there that do not want to put a sign in their yard or vote in a primary because they're afraid. And once you cross over that and show them, hey, did you know your next door neighbor is also a Democrat? No, they didn't know that because they never talk it. But once they learn that, it's amazing how it just multiplies.
It's also useful.
Documentation to prove it.
Yeah. It's also useful to get out there because, Mayor Wallace will probably be able to corroborate this. I talked to lots of folks and, as a county judge, many of my municipalities didn't want to have anything to do with the city of Austin.
Sarah,
and
I just
love
wanted
my city, but I get it, my folks in Pflugerville or, would say, listen, we want to have a conversation with you as the county judge, but we're not interested in having a conversation with the city of Austin because they scare us for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be honest about that.
And then there's the other side of it too. I ran into a lot of people that weren't afraid of Austin, but were envious and they wanted to be in Austin and they just like, oh, you're from Austin. Wow. So it's just it's an attitude. You have to deal with it, whatever it happens to be. But that's what we need to do. We need to cross that bridge. We need to get out there and talk to these people. Then they won't be so afraid of us.
Yeah, and truly listen to what you get back. Don't just talk at them. And I know you don't. I know that you don't, Sandra.
Thank you.
Go out there with a message and beat them about the head and shoulders with it. Go out there and ask them what they really think, and then really listen.
It's got a row of hands raised.
Wow, that got everybody talking.
I don't know how to get the little hand thingy to show up. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Cindy.
I'm sorry. I just have a quick comment. And that when I was, last time I was block walking, and friends of mine that were of color, I knew they were just, really good Democrats, but I couldn't get them to put a yard sign up. And they looked like I'd asked them to do something illegal, because they said that they'd gotten so much pushback from their white neighbors. And some of them actually like egged their car, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of, we have a long way to go. It's not just, white folks that might be a little hesitant to put a yard sign up or.
That's true, Cindy. And I'll tell you, the first encounter I had, I was in Hayes County, and I talked to a lady who decided she'd take a chance and put a sign in her yard, and I had my car shot. I got a bullet hole in my bumper of my car. So yeah, it's dangerous, but maybe the sign's not so important as it is the vote, and that's what you want to get.
Well, and we have to, and that's what I mean by really listening. Really listen to what our friends and neighbors are saying, because I will tell you from my experience that I'll take a couple examples of Pflugerville and Round Rock. Pflugerville and Round Rock, the very presence, you don't have to have a yard sign when there is a Black family who has become a pillar of the community, and their very presence is the best yard sign that you could possibly have, where you see this community of color building and engaging. And yeah, they might not be declaring their label, their party label, but they're declaring their values by being present, by really being present. Present at the PTA, present at the church, present at city council meetings. And they're like, yeah, I could put a yard sign up and lose credibility, or I could keep showing up and being a pillar of this community. So don't ask me to put a yard sign up. I'm doing my part in a different way. And hey, respect, man. Pflugerville is a completely different place than what it was 30 years ago. And it's not from yard signs. It's from the presence, the palpable presence of a truly multicultural community. That's super powerful.
No, I fully agree with you, Senator. And I think even to my own destitute, not usually attending a lot of club meetings and organizations and so forth, and intentionally doing that just because the mayoral role is not partisan, and being out there and doing those things. And unfortunately, sometimes people say, well, you haven't been to the meetings, or you're not a member or whatever. I'm like, but as you're saying, have the actions, have the words, has the impact at least demonstrated that the goals and the intentions directly align, right? And those like you that do know where my party affiliations are, some of us are just focused on, hey, the hour or two that I could be doing socialization like this, for right now, the roles and positions we're in, more so getting on people's butts, shooting emails out, and trying to make that change that we were elected to be able to do. So I fully agree with you that there are people that definitely align with the things we want to see. But to them, when it comes to family and work and then the time that they have remaining, do they spend the hour and a half in the meeting, or do they have an opportunity to make some ground change during that same hour and a half as well? And we don't want to lose them because, again, we want them to go to the polls and vote the way that we need them to vote to have that bigger, larger change at the legislation, as a legislator, as well as the federal level. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, many of our brothers and sisters in arms who are people of color feel much more powerful and are truly much more powerful by working through an issue area rather than through the party.
Yep.
And I think that us white liberals need to recognize that we have
Absolutely.
the luxury of putting a bunch of political signs in our yard, but some of our brothers and sisters in arms want to be working through their PTAs, through criminal justice reform movements, through some issue advocacy where they don't have to declare partisanship because of their lived experience. And we need to just get that big time. And I
have some hands up here, so I want to give them opportunity to speak. Dimple, did you have a question or a comment?
I did. Can y'all hear me okay?
Sure.
I apologize. I'm at my sister's house, and so I'm literally sitting in a corner here trying to be as invisible as possible. There are some 4-year-olds running around, but I want to just start off by saying thank you so much, Senator Eckhardt, for this wonderful discussion today. And I also wanted to just bring to everyone's attention that last week the Commissioner's Court entered a proclamation declaring that May was Abi Heritage Month, which is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And Senator Eckhardt, you were instrumental in your time in the Commissioner's Court, in appointing the first Asian American female judge in this county, myself. And so I have a great deal of gratitude towards you and all of the other commissioners. I did want to talk about just the permitless carry and how that affects domestic violence victims. Unfortunately, a few weeks ago in this county, we saw one of the worst tragedies that we've seen in a while, with 3 murders related to domestic violence, and just kind of, highlighted the fact that not only is domestic violence an epidemic, but really it's something that can have such an incredible impact on our community. And in 2019, 150 women were murdered by their intimate partners. 63% of those homicides were committed using firearms. And so this is really an enormous issue for us to try to tackle as a community, and something that I deal with in my court every day. And I know, Senator Eckhardt, that you fought hard. And I'm just wondering, what were those discussions like? I mean, was there any thought given to what victims of domestic violence suffer through, and just the fear level and the risk of lethality that's going to increase with a bill like this, and the impact it could have?
Dimple, Judge Malhotra, I think we're dealing with, we're the victims, I will be careful in my language, but I'll be intentional. We are the victims of our own success with regard to protective orders and family violence. For decades, and you know this better than I, for decades we have operated kind of under wraps in terms of our increases in our ability to successfully prosecute domestic violence, and in our increasing ability to utilize a quasi-civil procedure known as protective orders to give a modicum of protection to mostly women, but some men as well, that's short of criminal prosecution, in acknowledgement that these are super hard cases to make. So if we can't make it criminally, at least we can provide them some civil protection that also gives them a little bit of a leg up in any kind of divorce proceedings that they may have in the future, by having a court finding in advance that they can carry it around to the grocery store. And if their assailant stalks them in the grocery store, at least they can go to the security guard and say, look, I have a protective order that says this guy needs to stay 200 yards away from me. Please escort him out of the grocery store until I've had a chance to check out, get in my car, and drive away. It's not perfect, but it's something, and it's super important. What happened last week with lawless carry set us back tremendously. And then they tried to whitewash it by having another bill saying that women with a protective order who are younger than 21 can get a gun also. It's like, are you for real? That's supposed to fix this? We had 22,000 protective orders last year. And when a person has a protective order against them, and Judge Malhotra gave me the law behind this. I called her in a panic saying, give me the citations for, what the deal is with gun regulations at the federal and state level when you have a protective order against you. And she hit send, and it was in my inbox within 15 minutes. But when you get a protective order against you, you are not lawfully able to possess a gun or ammunition. Great thing, right? Awesome. But we have hardly any enforcement of that in the state of Texas. So more than 22,000 protective orders were issued in 2020. You know how many guns were collected from those people who had protective orders against them? Less than 100. 22,000 protective orders, and less than 100 weapons were relinquished. So we don't take their assailants' guns away by giving them guns. A national study was done that showed statistically that a victim of domestic violence who's in possession of a gun at the time that she's attacked is actually 5 times more likely to be shot. Mm-hmm. I know that's counterintuitive, but if you're packing and your assailant comes after you, he's more likely to be coming after you with a gun of his own, or to overpower you, take your gun, and injure or kill you with it. But I tried on the Senate floor. I brought all those statistics. The sponsor of the bill, Senator Hughes, who's a very smart man and an excellent attorney, had never seen a protective order template. So thank you for sending that to me, Judge Malhotra. I was able to give it to him on the floor. Okay. So this is what a standard template looks like. I highlighted the portions that are specific to Travis County and said the rest of it's under Texas Administrative Code and is in every protective order across the state. I highlighted the portions that are specific to Travis that are a little different, but everything else is template.
Right. And I know you tried, and I so appreciate that. And that's why we're so fortunate to have you. This is a huge challenge for us. And I think the biggest problem is lack of consistency. What we're doing in Travis County is not what's necessarily happening, and probably not happening across the state. And I'll tell you just as an update, I'm working with several different agencies and stakeholders to come up with a protocol as to firearm surrender specific to Travis County. And, even within our county, there's a lack of consistency. But
yeah, I'll send you 2 bills. Senator West and Senator Alvarado both had bills for a standardization of firearm relinquishment across the state of Texas. And the same senator who was bringing lawless carry and 20, young people carry. He's the chair of the committee that those 2 bills were referred to, and he hadn't heard either of those bills, even though he was pushing his lawless carry.
Wow.
So we've got a lot of work to do in that regard. Voter suppression and full arming of the population of Texas are two things that this leadership is absolutely committed to. Everybody gets a gun, and suppress anyone who doesn't look like us, which, we didn't even touch on criminal justice reform in this conversation. Coming off of last summer, we've done really virtually nothing to address our deep wounds in criminal justice, and actually we've done things to exacerbate the hell out of them. Lawless carry is going to create a feeding frenzy for racial profiling and the arresting of Black and brown people who will be treated in a disparate fashion under lawless carry, a massively disparate fashion, when frankly, and I might be speaking out of my hat here as a liberal white lady from West Austin, but if I were a Black man in America today, I'd want to have a handgun. And again, that's probably really imprudent for me to say. but I would be afraid if I had if I were a young Black man in America right now.
Daniel Harris has a question for us too. Daniel? You have to, there you go.
There, I'm unmuted now. I just want to thank the senator for reporting to us on all the legislation and the status of it, and comment that it's regrettable that one more time the legislature could not expand Medicare to Texas. And I just think that with all the time they wasted on issues like permitless carry and voter suppression, these need to be big issues that our candidates, our Democratic candidates, hammer away at in 22 about the failure of the legislature to expand Medicare and the voter suppression, and just remind voters of the kind of things that the legislature, that our Republicans waste their time on. That's what we need to make number one in our campaigns, is to say that the Republicans are misruling this state, and remind voters of that.
I think you're absolutely right, Daniel. And I think we also have we have to hold them accountable while also providing an alternative, a positive alternative to work toward. And I think that holding them accountable and saying, hey, here are the things that we need to do, the current leadership has not been able to deliver those for you. Instead, they've concentrated on this stuff over here that's made us less safe, less healthy, less educated, and with less opportunities. But here is what we need to do. We need to have full healthcare access for everyone. We need to have K through 12 that is something public, K through 12 that we are proud of, that everyone wants to participate in. And even if you don't have children, you want to participate in it because it's so cool. We need to have higher education that is that churns out highly qualified individuals and unassailable facts on which we can base policy. We need to have an energy industry that is clean and making the transition so that we don't choke our planet. And we need to have a justice system, both civil and criminal, that is fair for everyone and provides a level playing field of conflict so that our individuals, our families, and our businesses can thrive. And we need to continue to push those messages of opportunity infrastructure. It's not particularly sexy work, and it takes a really long time. And certainly as Democrats, we argue about how to get those things, but none of us disagree as Democrats. And I will tell you, most Republicans agree too. We need health, education, justice, and a thriving, level playing field from which everyone can grow their person, their family, and their business. What's so controversial about that?
There shouldn't be anything controversial about that. Lori, did you have a question or a comment?
Real quick, I do have a question. Senator Eckhardt, my daily commute takes me over by the Austin State Hospital, ASH. And I know that since, some court cases that came about in the late 80s, ASH is not what it used to be, has very limited capacity for people who are actually struggling with mental illness and need some time in a therapeutic environment. In fact, I think 80% of it right now is people who are waiting to stand trial, waiting to gain competency to stand trial. But what has caught my attention when I go down North Lamar is I see there's a big construction project going on at ASH right now. And I know a little bit about that, but I sure would like to hear kind of the latest, because I'm hoping that will help us here in Travis County with some of the very concerning issues that we have in not caring for people with mental illness as we should be. So I'd like to hear more.
It's definitely going to help us out. There is a state constellation of Austin State state hospitals. Austin State Hospital is just one of them. And so the San Antonio State Hospital and the Austin State Hospital are getting an infusion of state funds in order to, and those are one-time dollars, to completely re-envision the state hospitals so that they're places of true healing and thriving, rather than just places you park people in order to get them restored to competency to stand trial. So I have my predecessor, Senator Watson, pushed really, really hard to make the redevelopment of the Austin State Hospital part of his 10-point plan that included the medical school. So good news, the money is in place for that first phase redevelopment. The second phase money is mostly going to be from federal infusion, and we do expect that federal money to come through. So that's really, really good news. We've got to keep pressing on the issue of mental health care in the state of Texas. That's an area where we can see real bipartisan momentum building, and we need to keep building on that bipartisanship. While while the current Republican leadership is hammering the city of Austin on homelessness, the vast majority of our issues with regard to homelessness come back to substance use disorder and other co-occurring mental health problems, and a lack of funding for them at the state level. Most of the funding for mental health care, whether it's in the forensic context or in the healthcare context, is coming from federal dollars or local dollars. The state puts very little money into it. And also the city, God love them, they've got a big homeless, there's a big homeless issue there. But I also want to be super frank with y'all. When APD picks up, Bob the vet who's living in a tent, the city's investment in what happens to Bob after that is pretty small in comparison to the county investment and the federal investment of what happens to Bob after that. Bob will likely go to central booking, which is a city-county joint endeavor, get a county, probably mental health public defender, or maybe a general public defender now that we have one, which is a county investment. Probably go to vet court, which is funded by county dollars, a little bit of state money, and then some federal money. And then he'll probably be sent to Waco for competency restoration through the VA, which is federal dollars, and then sent back to the county to await trial. And then he'll probably get out on time served because he's probably been incarcerated for 6 months at that point. And if he was picked up on a Class B misdemeanor, that's probably time served. And hopefully he'll agree to be continually caseworked after that through integral care, which is predominant, which is a little bit of state money, a little bit of local money, and a lot of federal money. Mm-hmm. So again, the theme here is there's very little state money in the solutions, the long-term solutions for Bob the vet, or, Paul the musician who is schizophrenic, but he moved here and lives in a tent because he thinks he's going to make it in the big time, or Susan who was sex trafficked and is now homeless. Whether it's Paul, Susan, or Bob, most of the investment is local dollars and federal dollars.
Yeah, our state doesn't seem to support the state at all. Just amazing. And we always have that so-called rainy day fund. I mean, how rainy can it get after February, for crying out loud?
Right. On who does it have to rain?
Yeah, exactly.
That money down.
I want to take a little side trip right now because one of the things I feel we have the biggest problem with communication. And we have set up a website that we are enhancing to hope to be able to communicate all around as much as we can. And I'm going to introduce Emil Hunziker, who is our go-to person for everything. And Emil, will you tell us about what is the next thing we're going to be doing?
Oh, yep. If everybody can see my screen here, we have our website, netcodems.com, up and running, and we've had our news portal that have been used to put out information, but it's only a one-way thing. And so what we're going to now is the NETCo Dems Forum. The idea is that this is a place for NETCo Dems and their friends to introduce topics, discuss topics, and it's basically your platform. It's controlled membership, but the public can read the discussions. Only members can post. We do have some moderators watching the posts so that any that do not comply with our code of conduct can be taken down. And members, people who join the forum who don't obey the rules can be eliminated. But basically, it's an open forum for policy and politics that affect us here in Central Texas. This is the page, and to sign up to become a member, one goes to here, and there's a sign up form. Let's get I find myself here on my own website. Here we go. And then we have nothing posted at the moment, but we will be starting to deliver some content. But we're much more interested in the membership and our friends to post their information online here. As I said, we do have a code of conduct, which I ask everybody to read before, and we have a privacy policy for the website published that you should be aware of also. But the NETCo Dems website is up and running. The forum is open. We're going to officially open it with an initial post with some instructions later, but sign up is open now. It sends the executive committee a note to approve you to become a member, and then you can sign in and post information that you think that is useful to the community whenever you want.
And I would like to encourage our elected officials, Sarah and Lori and Dimple and anybody else, Bruce, please join this and let us know, what you're thinking. This is a good place for you to get some feedback, maybe, from what's going on. And of course, everybody else, all of our members, you got an opinion, you got a thing you want to share, you want to feel out what else other people are thinking about, throw it out there. That's what it's for. It's hopefully I'm going to make it as big and as universal as we can, and spread this news out, be a little bit different than our Facebook page maybe, but please join us with it, okay? I'd love to hear from you. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask us to go around, and those of you that are elected officials or want to become an elected official, please introduce yourselves and give you a little bit of speech. Why don't we start with Lori? I know you've talked today, but still tell us who you are and what you do.
I'll do it super quick. Hi, everybody. Lori Iserloh here. I'm a candidate running for the new 455th. It's a new civil district court in Travis County. So this is kind of at the same level as Laura Livingston and Jan Soifer, Catherine Mozzie, civil district court. It's a new bench. A Republican is serving on it right now, appointed by Governor Abbott, but I'm going to be the first person to run for that bench. I bring to the bench 28 years of experience as a frontline trial attorney. And fighting for the rights of people, everyone from LGBTQ to recent immigrants to this country. But I would also point out that just on a very basic human level, those civil courts they're our courts. And we've got some critical issues that we just heard from the senator on. And I think it's extremely important that the people we elect to those benches are dedicated, as I am dedicated, to treating all litigants with dignity and respect. And that's my pledge to you today. Again, Laurie Iserloh, I'm running for the new 455th. It's a new civil district court. The election is not until next March at the earliest, might be a little later because of redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, now we have met and Sarah has talked with us, so we'll skip you, okay? We'll go on to Dimple.
Yes, thank you so much, Sandra. As you all know, I am currently the judge of County Court at Law 4, which is our domestic violence court here. And NETCo was actually one of the first groups to endorse me in the last election, and I'm always so grateful to you all for that. I've done domestic violence work now for over 20 years, and it is a lifelong passion of mine. And I was so pleased that the voters in Travis County recognize that work and my passion and see what an important issue domestic violence is and how it can impact our community. And so I am running for re-election in 2022. I can't believe it's already here again. But I just finished up my predecessor's term and I'm running to keep my seat for a full term. And I look forward to your support again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dimple. And Craig, do you have anything to tell us?
Well, hello, everyone. It's so good to be here with you. I know many of you from my days as a president of the Black Austin Democrats. And so I'm happy to inform you that if Judge Brenda Kennedy decides to retire, then I plan on running for the 403rd District Court. I believe very strongly that we need to keep some diversity on the bench. And we need a judiciary that really reflects the diversity of the community that it serves. I'm very happy to have people like Jeff Trevelyan, Cheryl Cole, Natasha Harper Madison, Larry Wallace, who's on the call. I'm glad to have them supporting my efforts. And so, again, if Judge Kennedy announces her retirement, then I plan on running for that seat. And I look forward to giving you updates in the future. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Craig. Look forward to hearing from you. Dolores, are you running again?
Yes, ma'am. Dolores Ortega Carter. I'm your Travis County Treasurer. I'll be running for re-election. Look forward to your support and working with you to elect Democrats. County Treasurer's Office has really come to meet the challenge of the pandemic and everything, and we've kept the county running. And as the senator was talking about the opportunities that are the infrastructure, the Treasurer's Office, the Auditor's Office, those type of essential workers that are real necessary to keep the county going and make sure your dollars are spent wisely. I am real excited to run for re-election and hope that we have your support. Thank you.
Yeah. I think you can count on it, Dolores.
Thank you.
And now our mayor, what do you have to tell us?
All right. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it. Larry Wallace Jr. here, current mayor for the city of Manor, and this November will be the end of my term as mayor. Moved my family to a larger house. I'm currently paying out of pocket to serve in a job I'm currently volunteering in, but I still have a fight in me. So last Monday, I actually launched my exploratory committee for Texas District 10. So looking at hopefully being able to do a formal announcement after probably July 4th. So that way I do not create a special election here within the city. I want to finish out strong as I promised to do during this term before really focusing and unfortunately maybe having some conflict of what I hope to do overpowering what I'm currently in the seat right now to do. And I'll put the link in here. So you have it. Hopefully you can share it, push it out. I know a lot of people don't know me because I've been head down taking care of business, but I really want to be able to bring the same type of support I've done here in the local community to a larger area. We saw how bad it was during the winter storm. That really pissed me off. And I want to make sure people have the support they need and not the bureaucracy that they get.
Sounds good, Larry. Thank you so much. And July 17th, we're going to have a special meeting of which Larry will be in attendance as our guest, and maybe some other very special guests. So that's the one I'm hoping will be outdoors. And that brings me, well, let's see, who else do we have here that's an elected official or wants to be one? Do I have any other candidates there? Okay. All right. Well, okay. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to see for a show of hands or a shout out. In July, would you like to have an outdoor or open meeting as opposed to Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've had both shots.
Okay, I have too.
Yes, me too.
All right. I don't see any negatives. Okay. So that's what I'm going to aim for. And well, I think it's going to be a very, very special meeting. I'm hoping to have some exceptional guests and maybe plan the ghost town, but that's got to be approved by my executive committee. But anyway, we have things to look forward to. And in June, we are going to be meeting on Juneteenth. I don't know what the events are going to be around Juneteenth, but I am trying to get a very special guest from another state even in and speak with us. I'm not going to tell you who because it may not work. And then I'll be embarrassed. It's Stacey Abrams. Okay. If she will come, we will see her on Juneteenth. Okay. That's still up in the air. She's got a lot of things working to do, as you well know, but that's my goal. So keep it a secret and tell everybody. Okay. Is there any other comments from everybody? Anybody about anything? Okay, I
have a really exciting question about water.
Water? Okay.
If Senator Eckhardt is still here and able to talk about the Water, Ag, and Rural Affairs Committee. I know it's a really exciting topic.
Yes, Senator's still here.
I don't know if anybody else is interested in water and ag, but yeah, it's a really important topic. Actually, our water resources are pretty stressed. We're right on a dividing line between the wetter portions of the state and the drier portions of the state. We sit right at the dividing line, and the population explosion in the dry portion of Central Texas is really causing deep, deep, deep concern for our brothers and sisters to the east who are sitting on a lot of water, but they're reliant on that water for an agricultural industry and way of life. We need to find a better balance there. One way to find a better balance is to monetize carbon sequestration and also legalize marijuana cultivation. Both of them are excellent industries for our rural brothers and sisters who are sitting on top of that water. And then in exchange, come up with a reasonable sharing mechanism for the water resources of the state, groundwater and surface water. But that's a very, very long-term effort. And I'm glad to be on Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs for that reason.
Okay, well, we'd like to hear more about that moving forward. Frankly, I thought with all the rain the last couple of months, I thought we had plenty of water, but.
Oh, there's never enough water. One last question for the senator is that there are a couple of House resolutions that have passed pretty with a lot of bipartisan support, if not unanimous support. Mm-hmm. The one against let's see. The one against condemning racism against the Asian American Pacific community.
Representative Wu had that one. Yep.
That's right. And then of course the one about the Cheryl Cole one, HCR 5, naming the new federal building after Barbara Jordan, which is great. What happens to that now in the Senate with a House resolution? Does it move through the Senate?
Yeah, they moved through the Senate, and with the condemning racism against Asian Americans, those are important symbols. We need to put actual heft behind them. I love resolutions, and they're the start of something. I think that the resolutions will pass handily. The naming of one of the new buildings on the Capitol Mall after Barbara Jordan, also really, really important symbolism. And we also need to put action behind that symbolism. We haven't had a Black woman in the Texas Senate since Barbara Jordan.
Okay, thank you. Emil, did you have another question?
No, I don't have another question, but a last comment. I want to renew my recommendation of following, in whatever manner, Heather Cox Richardson, a history professor at Boston University, puts out a daily email. One can also join her blog. Basically connecting current events with history, current political events. She started all this to be as an anti-Trumper, but she continues to do her today's essay is about when Republicans decry socialism. They're basically talking about the transfer of white dollars to Black people and poor white people also, but less than that. And she provides a very good read. It's a short read every day, and even underlines it. It's the only person's blog that I've seen with footnotes at the end, but that's she is a history professor and really a fantastic voice that one should tune into if one's interested in why we are where we are.
And encourage Emil to add those to our forum in the future, because there are really very interesting articles, and he sent them to me, and I've enjoyed them immensely. So I encourage that. Anything else? No, I'm not hearing anything or seeing any more raised hands. I think I'm going to close our meeting. Thank you so much, Senator Eckhardt, for being with us today. It's been an absolute delight. I love your dark humor.